Good morning, um, everyone. Before we get going, are there any questions or statements on the last couple of days, yesterday or Monday, that anyone would like to address or bring up or state before we do a recap? So,
Good morning, Ness. This is Ron. Uh, you guys brought up a couple of things yesterday I wanted to talk about that I see in what you said. I don't know if you want to recap first or not, but
no,
we may take,
we can go ahead and lead into the recap after that.
okay. There were a couple of things that yesterday I thought was an extraordinary lesson, by the way, and a lot of stuff was said, and uh, I saw the church in this, and I saw the need for all of us to have the backgrounds that we do, and the connection that was made uh, that we are making due to the separation that was done by the church. But Barbara started off yesterday talking about the statement that Pastor made, we do not know what we do not know. And I listened to her explanation of that. And she talked about once you, and if she's here, she can explain it a lot better than I can. But what I heard was when you think you know something, you close your mind, you close yourself off, and you are not able to receive anything else. And that's as far as you can go. That to me explains the present situation with the church. That explains to me the very worst of masculinity and how it divides and from there takes and start a totally different journey away from truth. So the statement, you don't know what you don't know, is a feminine statement because it invites you to surrender and it invites you to receive what is there. It invites you to be vulnerable and say, I want more. I have an intuitive nature that tells me that there's more here. I don't see it, but I see through my third eye that there's more. So the statement in itself was kind of an open-ended thing that invites you in. Uh, the brilliance of it is when I think Pastor used the example of George Washington Carver walking in the woods. He didn't just go in the woods because he didn't have anything to do or that was a habit that he did in the morning. He went with intention and expectation to receive. So that is when you look at that and you put that with the presentness of the church, when we all come from our own backgrounds and various parts of the country, and we have this nature, we have this type of attitude, it invites femininity back into the church. It changes the church. So we are in the process of not only changing the earth, changing the universe. We're starting with religion without, giving much thought to that, but because every one of us still have people in these places that we care about. We still have people that we see on a daily basis. So there is still love and connection and feelings connected to these people that are in the church. So we are in the process of making that change. The other thing I saw that connects to that is the relationship between expansion and memory. Memory, if I start off with Ron's memory, that memory is you redigging the wells of Abraham. Memory is the beginning. but it is not the end. Expansion is what that connection is. The connection. I wrote something down when S and Bob were talking last week, when Bobby was talking about being stuck, and we got into the expansion and connecting to others, but expansion connects us all. Expansion has no depth to it as far as any limitations. It does not have any boundaries at all to it. So when you look at expansion, it brings inclusiveness into what was once divided. And again, I'm talking about the church. It brings inclusiveness into the different cultures and what was cherished in the earth by the indigenous people. So it connects us all back together. And you move to a place when you see the expansion, and you move to a place where decisions are made. You move to a place where you start to see with that third eye, and you making comparisons to what you see with your eyes. So then it becomes that desire, because the whole time the transformation is being made, and that transformation is we're becoming life. And what I mean by becoming life is you become life givers, meaning male and female. You recognize the balance there, and you become what you need to be when that needs to happen. So but it comes at a cost, and that cost is what has you when you have to make the decision: how far do I want to go on this journey? How much do I want to continue? So you guys just said a lot the other day, yesterday rather, and just a couple of things that I got out of it. So, but thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to. Any question? Because I'm not. Sometimes I get kind of. Any questions on anything?
No, I definitely, I definitely feel that, Ron, and I wanted to when we were talking to you. I don't know if he can say it like he did yesterday, but the closing statement we had yesterday that Pastor gave really defined day in and day out. I mean, he took it to the simplest form of what being Elohim looks like. And I don't know if you could sort of restate that when we talked about just what it looks like for each individual. As you were saying that, Ron, I just thought about that because that was just, it put it all in place, and there was a good summary of what Barbara said, and just like what we, we say, walk as Elohim, function as Elohim, and we've given a lot of attributes of that, but that was just a spot on description yesterday of what he said as far as the actual character of the person and the connectivity of the person. I don't know if you can remember or restate that, Pastor.
I know I can't restate it the way it was yesterday because it came from a different place in my mind. However, I do think that there are those on this on this line rather, who are able to probably repeat it or to restate it better than I can, even though I made the original statement. I know it was in regards to our being in this earth for the purpose of bringing into existence humans as opposed to animalistic attitudes, and that it had nothing to do with our occupations in this earth, our professions or careers, but it has our present has everything to do with becoming who we were becoming aware of who we were created to be, and the whole concept of being Elohim speaks to us always being in the now, because tomorrow does not exist, and that is why we are not to take any note of and have any focus on tomorrow, because everything is the now. And the only reason there is day or night is because the darkness reminds us of the wisdom that is to come, the wisdom from which we get our enlightenment. And that darkness, that night is the wisdom, and the next day is enlightenment. And when we look at the dark wisdom, we have opportunity to choose whether we are going to be detrimental to mankind or whether we are going to be enhancers of the good of mankind. Pretty much, I think that's what I said. But I'm sure there was more that was said. I would definitely appreciate it if someone else would aid me in recapping what was said yesterday.
And part of that too came on the heels of George W. And we really we're talking about the profession. Really, the profession has no stake in who we are. It's just what it is. It's a profession. We talked about just the connection there and what we're supposed to bring there, and rooting out the negative attitude, and then also George Clark brought in the just the aspect of once again, taking out the emotional intelligence and how everything's there for a reason. But at the end of the day, we create, and we are Elohim in that environment that we are in. We are there to basically heal, to manifest things there for mankind in the environment we're in, and we realize that's where our place is, and not necessarily trying to. I know we brought up the word assimilate several times yesterday, not trying to assimilate, but being who we are and being the purpose that we are, instead of assimilating in the different environments. That pressure will go away eventually. Was one of the gist that I talked about yesterday, and that was brought up a couple times. Any other thoughts or comments?
The idea of integrated rather than assimilated speaks to bringing together the different parts of different cultures, different indigenous people, and making a whole from them. Assimilation is disregarding the cultures and attributes of other indigenous people, and overriding their thoughts and their desires with your own. The idea of professions is simply for the purpose of sustaining the body and the earth, of sustaining families until we get to a place where we understand who we are. Because the more we are, the more we walk in the footsteps of Elohim, the more we embrace that, the less we rely on professions or careers to sustain, because we realize that any force in our life, our Creator, and the unicity we have with our Creator is what also sustains us, and that is the reason Jesus made a statement that the bread of which I eat, you know not of.
Yes. Hello. don't know if we did Pastor drop. Picking up on that for you, if he dropped, he'll dial back in. We also talked about one of the things that Jesus, we talked about the miracles, how Jesus used the eighth sense and his intuition to know when and where to impact people. But more importantly, one of the biggest things that Jesus did was he took his disciples, the guys that followed him, and we talked about this yesterday, how he really took 12 different individuals and, from different places, different statuses, different educational degrees of levels of understanding, whatever you want to say, social standing. He took these individuals and he made them all aware of who they were. He made them all aware of the Elohim in him. And we talked about how you compare the What Would Jesus Do bracelets, and that's sort of like something that would, and that's just an example, but this is something that we misplace our power by doing that, displace our power by doing it. But he just made everyone aware of who they were when they were in his presence, and how he got men to follow him was basically making folks aware of who they were, meeting them where they were at. He didn't try to manipulate or circumvent any sort of system, and just the difference in that and religion, how religion approaches people of how they reach them, and not really fully making them aware and understanding of who they are. And so that was brought a little bit yesterday. And things I want to touch on today and going forward are taking a close look at the. Okay.
You can go ahead, but I'm back. Continue, please.
Okay. All right. What I wanted to do on the heels of just what Russ said earlier about the part of the healing, really want to get us to a point of we understanding, plus understanding why the healing is important for us. And then the other thing I thought but once we got going yesterday, I didn't really bring it up, was we have a misconception of success. And I really understand, and I got to understand what success really is for us as Elohim, and as just people trying to be spiritual and being who we are, being spiritual, but also balancing the two natures. And we were going to go that direction a little bit yesterday, but when George brought the question about profession, it just really opened the door that, like I said, you kind of flow with what's on everyone's mind. I threw the question out yesterday, but I'm going to ask it today before I go into it, just to kind of gauge what you're thinking. Someone tell me, what is success, and then what you think the opposite of success is. Because the earthly person, we're driven to try and be successful and to survive. And that's what we've been sold that, we've basically been sold to a degree that either you're going to have some success or you're not. But what is that really? I mean, have we put so much emphasis on that and pressure on ourselves and people, or just misguided time? Because wherever you're spending your time and investing your time is basically the direction you want to go in. So if someone would tell me just really quick, what do you think success is? And then what do you think the opposite of success is?
Good morning. I hope I can answer your question. Yes, with success comes misery. And I'm using that, there's somewhere in the Bible, Ecclesiastes or something like that. The more wisdom you gain, the more grief you're going to experience. So when I look at success, I know misery comes with it. And the more you increase your wisdom to gain success, the more misery is going to come with that. So I just look at success and bringing in wisdom and understanding that misery follows with that. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, what is success that causes that misery? What is success itself?
What is success?
Are we successful so that it results in that?
George, are you? And I'm gonna give the worldly and what perception is just in general. When we think of success, we think of someone who's admired. They've reached they've accomplished a lot. So when the term that I was looking for here, when we think of success, we think of someone who's accomplished a lot. Somebody who set goals out. They always seem to be ahead of the game. You can look at, without even going the material route, you look at someone who has a lot of material things, someone who's well respected, and just someone who's accomplished. And that's the word I guess I'm harping on, is that we think successful people are people who have accomplished a lot, well respected, and well renowned. And the perception of someone who is unsuccessful is what? I mean, someone who's failed, someone who hasn't accomplished a lot, someone who's made a lot of mistakes, or just somebody who say the term can't get right. And we look at people who fail as unsuccessful. I mean, do we agree with that? Just how the world views it? Does everyone agree with that?
I think that there are the definition of understanding of success in our society. It's seen differently depending on who you are. For example, success in the African community in this country does not necessarily mean that you have made a lot of money, but it means that you've done a lot to enhance the life of people. In the Caucasian community or European community, success is based on how much money you make and what kind of political contact or what kind of contact you have of people who has power.
Right. And the opposite of that is just failing or just being average. That's what they view. So when I posed that question, the reason I was posing it is because I started looking at it just like this lesson, looking at that in a different light. Because when you start looking at it from a spiritual perspective, and you start looking at it from an identity perspective, who you are to the core, it means different. It means different things, because we've got to, because you still have, like you say, health and wealth ministries. You still have people who are told, hey, go get this business, go ahead and get started, and you're trying to reach the American dream. And the reality is success is a little closer to what you said about the African community. To me, what I saw was that someone who is successful is a person who's enlightened where they are. In order to be Elohim, this is real important, that in order for us to maintain that awareness, to constantly grow, it requires a commitment, constantly be changing. You got to commit to change. You got to let go of your fixed ways, and you have to change the way of being and acting in order to just constantly be moving. So success to me is consistent enlightenment. It's consistent enlightenment. And the opposite of that, which was I started talking about yesterday because someone just kind of read my mind about it. The opposite of success is not failure, because failure is a thing that that puts fear in us. The opposite of success is not trying, not participating, being content to stay in the same church or this state of mind that's not feeding you, that's not helping you grow. The opposite of success is not trying, not getting involved, not connecting with people, refusing to connect. And the reason that's the opposite is because it's going against everything that people who are successful cherish. When you don't want to participate in it, it just you take that energy away. You take away that positivity. You take away that's one less connection when you refuse to even acknowledge or be aware of, hey, there's something else. There's something else in me. So the person who's the opposite of success, they could have all the material things you think, but reality is their lack of engagement, their lack of willing to expand and to connect. It's the opposite. Says the failure is nothing, because the failure is what we should embrace, because that is the thing that makes you stronger. It gives you a better understanding, because you learn and you grow. The enlightenment comes from failure sometimes, and so when we are unwilling to step out, that means that you even though you can be the most successful person physically and material wise, that fear of being willing to acknowledge who you are and to step into that arena where you're enlightening yourself, where you're taking a focused walk, organized, and walking in function instead of dysfunction. That's the person who is not successful, who is just unwilling to tap into the awareness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we've had the biggest example in front of our face. We always talk about Jesus for so long. But yes, think about this: as we navigate, and this is the scary thing about understanding who you are and being Elohim and navigating the eighth sense. Just like Jesus, when you navigate, you begin to get to a point of you start seeing things as they're coming, and there may be stress points or things that okay, this is gonna be coming at me, but I know I still have to go through it. That's the scary part about the eighth sense, when your intuition starts telling you that, hey, something is coming, but I still need to deal with it. Just like Jesus knew certain things were coming, but he still dealt with it. That's the part that we have to. I know we've been looking at things and everything seems great, and it is, but just know that when difficulty comes, it's a matter of how we handle it, and we can't be fearful of going through it or pull back. We have to continue when we see that as well. We have to continue walking in the path we're walking and being who we're being. We still have to continue to change despite some of the things that we know that may not be what we want in the journey. Does that make sense? So, an example is so like we're on this journey now, and it's sort of like we ask for peace. We know we're going to be challenged with opportunities to demonstrate what peace is. We know they're coming. We don't understand always fully what it is, but you know that, okay, I'm going to have this is going to be in my walk. We have to stay disciplined. We've been saying this for like several weeks about being disciplined and to yourself and spiritually, because you have to, no matter what. And it takes a certain amount of discipline, like we talked about the careers yesterday, to spiritually do what you need to do. And so that's the part that we really have to prepare ourselves for and just continue, because with being Elohim and understanding that, we have a certain responsibility. And one of the responsibilities that we talked about is healing, and forgiving comes with that, showing love, compassion. All these things we know come with that. And our identity tells us that, and it lines up in a way that we know what we have to do. And so having the spiritual discipline to do that may feel difficult when you're looking at it before you're in it. But once we're in it and you're going to be who you're going to be, it will move forward. But don't back away from something because of the fear of what you perceive it may do to you. And so that's the part about these things, the things that we are lining up to be, is that sometimes the appearance of what could happen to us may be worse than what I really want to go through. But like you said before, when you're in the storm and things are coming, you have that memory and all those things have to line up, and you have to trust and be. So I guess I'm laying out there that we may be tested, but in the end of that test, we just have to trust and continue to be who we need to be. And I'm going with there somewhere. Was someone get ready to say something? Because the reality of we talk about healing. If someone injures you or hurts you, or even if you see a situation that needs to be dealt with, healing can only begin. Healing can only begin from you, from us as an individual first. If you cannot start the healing and the positive process within yourself first, you're going to be stuck. So it can only begin with us first, and then you can decide how the next step will be manifested. And then that's the thing. Like, so when we're waiting on someone else to do it, it's constantly going to still be our responsibility, started within ourselves. Does that make sense? Is everyone following it?
Repeat that
Yes.
again, yes.
So when we look at when things are in need of healing around us, whether it be situations, something that we feel needs to be dealt with, that healing can only begin with us first. When we deal with when we deal with say that the shooting in Charleston years ago, and there's so much uh, that happened on the surface of that. Like we were all hurt, we were all impacted, we were all we were just all hurt and devastated initially. That process of healing and going forward couldn't start until we dealt with the healing with us first. So the healing can only begin from each individual first, because no matter how that situation progresses, if we don't heal, we're always caught in the moment of where it happened. Hopefully that's a good example. So the healing always has to begin with us first, and then you can decide how that next step is manifested, how you're gonna move from there. But when we that's almost like someone saying, hey, pray for this situation, pray for brother so and so. Well, if we're impacted and hurt, we have to deal with that within ourselves first, because if we don't do that, when we start reflecting, we're not doing it with our identity, then whatever that next step is, we're doing it based on a certain prejudice. So that's why in the beginning, when things happen or take place, you have to make sure that it's aligned internally before you, because we all create. Before we look at the next step, make sure that it's aligned with us internally, so that we don't prejudice the situation, and that's a part of just the alignment identity. Does that help or make sense?
It's
Yes,
wrong.
I understand because
Go ahead, Pastor.
go ahead, Ron. No, you
I,
go
I,
ahead.
I want to hear your explanation, because I still don't quite get it. I guess what I'm thinking of when he started, I'm looking at the expansion part, and if I'm hurting it, judging from the example given, that hurt all of us when that shooting took place. So the part of my healing takes that I know that there are others out there hurting too. And we're all feeling and experiencing the same thing, and that's part of the recovery, because we gain strength from each other. And my desire is to bring comfort to you and the others out there. So I'm just trying to pull all that together. Not quite sure I see it yet.
How I see it is that the way we approach what has taken place will determine whether or not healing will take place. For example, if our attitude towards what happened is negative or revengeful, then that energy will permeate the society.
Yes. So it's like it's all like, I think Veronica used the term. When you have great power, it's like great responsibility. That's the simplest way to put it. We're aware of who we are. We're Elohim. Then we also always function as that. We have to operate with that. And so, like Pastor said, when something initially happens, and I use that shooting as I was trying to think of something we all could kind of relate to. When things happen to us, good or bad, we have to remember, okay, who we are at that time, and how you process it going forward determines how you're going to handle it. So when that shooting happened, if your idea of healing was you just wanted to make sure justice was done, they caught him, let's punish him. That was a lot of people's idea of healing. I mean, it was a horrific event, but sometimes we think healing is punishment of the culprit, and then remembering everyone involved in grief. Well, we know through all our teaching and everything that we've been taught now, the healing has to happen for everyone involved. When someone approaches you at work and they have an issue and you're trying to resolve it, you're trying to help them, it goes back to, okay, how are you gonna do that reflection, tap into that memory based on your identity, or you're gonna help them based on a prejudice? And so that's where I'm headed at. That we have a responsibility with this power and to always be who we are, so that we don't create based on prejudice. We create based on who we are, how we align. And a simple creation is your next step. How are you going to manifest that healing? Or how are you going to handle the processing of what has happened to you? But it always has to start with you. You can't process it as a group. You have to say, okay, how am I wrong? How am I going to process this situation? And then the connection to the group will help. But it always comes back to how we see in it. And that goes back to you're always aware of all the events you were talking about last week, like a lot of different things that happen in the world. And when you first heard about those events, you processed it. You wanted to see how you could impact it, how you could help without a prejudice of who or where. But you really, you brought up the earthquakes. You brought up the, how we supposed to process it. And what I'm saying, that process always begins with you first. Like we can bring it to the table with the group, but also we begin with us first, and then we decide, hey, let's see what's the first step we need to take, if that makes sense. But you have to figure out what it is first, what it feels like to you first, and that's where we always go back to that alignment, how it's who are we, and that's gonna, and am I doing it based on who I am, or am I doing it based on a prejudice? And that's it goes back to the steps of meditating and really using that inner alignment to do it. And I just really wanted to give an example of that, so that moving forward, we understand the power, but we also see the responsibility that comes with it, that we just take some of the simplest things and really build on it and create the healing, create the environment based on who we are and not necessarily any kind of prejudice. Does that help, Ron? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I had never thought about it like that. Thank you. Yes. See what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Audrey.
I have sort of a question comment, but I'm sitting here thinking about how you started talking about success, and then you kind of dovetailed into healing. And I was trying to figure out for myself, how does that go together? But I see where you're going, because the way, and I think it goes back to like the European mindset versus the African mindset versus the eighth sense. Because success for Europeans, as you said, it's all based in money and power. Whereas success for the African is based more in community and relationships. But many Africans have taken on the European mindset to go after money and power. And even the church has that European mindset of, of, it's all equated to how many members you have, and that dovetails to how much money you have. And then, so I think for me, the forgiveness part comes in is when you for yourself recognize what's happening and recognizing that it's the eighth sense and that mindset that really should be governing your life. So when you have a kind of reckoning and a realization of that eighth sense, that's how you heal yourself. And then when you heal yourself, you can then begin influencing the macro. You can begin influencing other people in terms of helping them to heal themselves and recognize where their true mindset is, so that then everybody starts to be healed. Am I getting that right?
Yes, and you actually kind of helped me tie it together, because we just thought out the success, and the success was really talking about tied more to the assimilation that we talked about yesterday. And so, like you said, that was those are the two different mindsets. But what's happened is that there's been a thirst or need to assimilate more towards that European model. And so one of the things we need to heal is that assimilation mindset. We need to bring some healing towards that, because there have been a lot of a lot of things centered around people trying to fit in, whether it be chasing the American dream or they redefine what success was to them. And that assimilation is part of the healing that has to take place. And when we are looking for that healing, it goes back to what we've always said: we can't shape things, because when we try to shape it, we're shaping it with our own prejudice, and we're trying to tell how things should be, instead of wanting to put the healing on the assimilation. And so that's where I was trying to connect the dots earlier, was that the success is really enlightenment, and the enlightenment is that constant commitment to change and letting go of just fixed ways of being and acting, in order for us to kind of keep our attitudes and our focus aligned with who we are. We've always got to be committed to changing and evolving, because when we don't change and evolve, we're stuck. So the attitude always has to be evolving. And so I thank you for kind of helping the connection. But the healing part was, it was meant to go along with the assimilation and the people trying to buy into that idea of success. And so we do need healing from that perspective. Does that help or make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. When Audrey made this statement about the African mindset seeking to assimilate, we really have a difficult time resisting assimilation. And the reason is because the thing that we hold in high regard, or the organization that we hold in high regard in our community, is the church. And the church reinforces the need for assimilation. It does not show us how assimilation is, how destructive assimilation is and can be. Not only that, but the school and the system in our society that educates also teaches assimilation. And at that point, the church becomes one who reinforces that. And what happens is, in order for us to be delivered from this attitude of being like someone else, or assimilating into a system that is destructive to us as a people, um, we have to become vulnerable. And we are taught in our churches and in our schools that we are not supposed to be vulnerable. We are supposed to be tough, and we are supposed to fight to hold on to what we believe when we don't believe anything. What we are taught to do, in essence, is to fight to hold on to the idea of assimilating into an adverse society. And to be healed from that, we have to become vulnerable. And that vulnerability is seen when we make the efforts to move away from what the church and the schools have taught us. That vulnerability is seen when we travel a road that we don't know where the road leads. We don't know where the journey is taking us, and we don't understand what we are going to see in the next step that we take. But we trust it because it resonates. And resonate simply means that it vibrates at the same frequency as does the universe. And that in itself is deep inside of the African. And that is what actually moves us to raise questions, that moves us to walk away from those things that we once held dear. And then we began to see the true nature of what is, and that in itself requires a great deal of vulnerability. Our strength has always been taught, we have been taught rather, that our strength is in our education. Our strength is in our beliefs and what the church teaches, when in actuality, our strength actually is in our vulnerability that we embrace when we start searching for truth. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, because that vulnerability you speak of is the when you try, when you're not gonna let fear keep you in one place, or just and that's the opposite of success, when you're just willing to, like, you probably should leave, but you stay into the mindset that's just comfortable in what you're being taught, for example. That's not being successful. Even though you think things are great, there's a certain amount of success there, but obviously it's not trying. That's what true failure doesn't doesn't hurt you like you think. True failure is that you've learned, you've growth. It's growth. Recovering from something that you failed on. Recovery is growth. Recovery is the expansion. Not willing to participate, not willing to act on an awareness that you have, to find out more about yourself. That's failure. Not trying, not wanting to reach your potential, not wanting to take the opportunity to be enlightened. That's the opposite of success. That's just the enlightenment. It's the growth, the expansion. It's the things that you recognize that I constantly have to commit to change. You commit to change. It's not something that looks. You're not going to be a different person tomorrow, but the commitment is that you're willing to grow. You're willing to grow and not be stuck. And that's when we look at ourselves and our different levels of where we've come from. When we look back over time in the memory, memory is always evolving too, because you don't commit to staying the same. You move on, and this growth pattern helps. It reinforces the identity. It reinforces being Elohim constantly. But if you don't want to do that, and you're comfortable with not really with the blinders on, then that's the person who's not successful. That's the opposite of success. When you look at someone who steps out and and you perceive a failure if it doesn't work out the way that you are, no, that shaping doesn't come in that way. That shaping comes in order for that person to grow and expand. So we look at people's shortcomings, and we develop prejudices against those, but those mistakes are things that that person should embrace, and it should help them expand, because recovery is in growth. And I hope that helps too on the heels of what Pastor said. And any thoughts or questions on that for you?
Yes, ST. This is GC George Clark, and I just wanted to share in terms of, you talk about again recovery, and I think as we go back and look at, the ancient texts, with regards to, our history and our culture, it talked about, the overall aim, of education exemplified by the Neturah in terms of divine principles. And I think as we go back to beginning, or we begin to understand, spirituality, before religion, it talked about the concept of education. And it said that the ultimate aim of education in Egypt was for a person to become one with God, or to become like God. And it talked about, the path to development of God-like qualities were through the development of the virtue of spiritual wisdom. And so as we, continue to, seek or search for truth, going back to appreciate our foundation, appreciating our history, takes us away from the teachings in terms of what we were taught in the church, which again, in terms of us being able to, understand the whole aim of our African culture and education was again to become one with God. And I think if that's, where our foundation is, then a lot of what has confused us or caused us to be caught up into entangled threads, I think we're bringing a newness or oneness in terms of being able to help us to appreciate, the teachings of how it manifested from the beginning. So I just wanted to share that thought, when Pastor mentioned about, education, because again, in the skills and the strengths that we're blessed with, I think that part of our application of doing was in the mindset in terms of how we were taught, in Western society. But I believe that we're now looking at from a sense that we can retrain our thoughts, so to speak, in terms of how we were taught. Hopefully that resonates a little bit, but I think, again, our understanding of education has been misguided, and I think we need to look at that. Those are my thoughts. I'm sorry, I want to share that. I'm done.
No, thank you.
May I,
Yes, sir.
on the heels of what George, in terms of the principal purpose for teaching in the beginning was to learn how to be one with our Creator. If you think about that in regards to what took place in the garden, what education was meant for in the beginning was to teach us how to be functional as is our Creator, how to function as our Creator would function in this environment that we live in, how to be Elohim in an earthly environment. Dysfunctional or is being taught that the purpose of education is for you to money. The purpose of education is for you to learn how to become wealthy, or at the very least, have aspirations to becoming wealthy. I see a difference in the educational system now than what it was, excuse me, when I was in college. When I was in school, we went to school to learn. Now, were we learning to be one with Elohim? No. We had a broad spectrum of of education that but now education is narrowed to corporate control, and corporate control of education enhances the belief that the more education you have, the more money you're going to make. And that has been divided into a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate, etc. Wherein this only creates division, and division results in dysfunction. So when our focus is on learning how to be one with our Creator, it is at that juncture that unicity takes place amongst us. We began to come together with a common goal. We learn how to function in this earth realm, but we don't function for the purpose of wealth. We function for the purpose of wealth, but we don't function for the purpose of wealth. What I mean by that is this: we don't function for the purpose of wealth in terms of money, but we function in terms of wealth for the purpose of being one with our Creator. And that is the greatest wealth that we can have. Why? Because when that takes place, everyone is taken care of, and everyone is seen as me, as seen as ourselves. And that is what's meant when it talks about Elohim being one yet many. It's talking about, yes, I am Elohim, and the many is understanding that everyone else is Elohim as well. And that because everyone else is Elohim, I am simply a part of the whole of Elohim, yet I am Elohim. So this process of education from the beginning has been ridiculed as being sacrilegious, has been ridiculed as being something that is to be reviled, as opposed to embraced. Even when we look at the way that that we have been taught that there were multiple gods that were worshipped, or in Kemet or in Egypt. The Cushites did not worship multiple gods. It talks about the Sphinx, the lion, being worshipped. That's not true. The lion was simply a symbol of the courage that we have from our Creator. And if we are going to take that and believe that a lion was worshipped simply because it was a symbol of courage that we have from our Creator, then we have to say that we worship the ostrich, or we worship the stork. Well, the stork is the one who we say brings babies. So do we worship that? No, that's just a symbol of a birth. And all the other animals that we look to for symbolism, we don't worship the eagle, and the eagle is the symbol of this country. So it's not being worshipped. But I will say this: it is funny that the very symbol of this country is a vulture, and a vulture will eat anything. So if we learn based upon the symbolism of this nation, we become vultures as well. We revel in the death of people, and I don't mean necessarily physical death. I'm talking about what we call the lack of success, and we take advantage of that. And that in itself is the nature of a vulture. So our education must be revamped. And the revamping of it means that we must return to beginning, the beginnings of what education means. One of the reasons that African children have problems in school is not because they're dumb. It's not because they can't learn. It's because there is something in them that speaks to them and they find it difficult to learn in the manner that they are being taught because it doesn't make sense to them. There is a cultural difference that's embedded in them. And they leave the school and they go out and get involved in things. And the things that they get involved in, they rise to the top at doing it, even though it may be illegal. Why is that? Because they are learning and they are processing the way that they were built, the way that they were created. And that is one of the reasons we have to permeate the macro with the understanding that we are Elohim. And as such, we do not take on the attributes of those who tell us we're not Elohim, of those who teach us that money is power. We must teach that we do not take on those attributes. And then when that takes place, then in the macro, they can begin, they meaning our children can begin to draw from that and understand that we are life givers, not life takers. Thank you.
Yeah, but before you started that, I was gonna just say that yeah, we should always create from a place of understanding, and this each sense brings us the ultimate opportunity to absorb the wisdom for us to create understanding, and all the things that you stated about the education. And it goes, that's our ultimate education, is to go back to beginning, to follow the breadcrumbs back to the essence and who we are, who we were designed to be, because we say it all the time, like your identity is how you should operate. And if you're operating opposite of your identity, then you're not accessing your true power. And that's where we once again we just have to fall back and really take a look at who are we, and our education and our focus to be based on that. And it's funny if you look at all the people that we talk about who are successful, and you look at from the earthly realm, they all dropped out of school because they saw that they had gifts and they needed to cultivate those gifts in order for them to bring forward what was inside of them. You look at your musicians, your entertainers that have impacted a lot of people, or Microsoft, Steve Jobs. These guys dropped out because they saw that it was taken away from their focus, and they had gifts that they wanted to bring forward, and the education system wasn't going to cultivate that inside them. So just even on those material and earthly examples, people learn to cultivate what's inside of them so they can manifest what they are destined to do. And these guys understood that they desired to get out of the situation they were in school, and went and cultivated a gift because they understood just from that perspective what was inside of them. So it was no different than us. We cultivate the Elohim that we are. We need to cultivate that as our educational process so that we're able to do the things and take the responsibility of the healing and enlightenment and the awareness that needs to be brought forward in the success that we should be operating on, which is the enlightenment and commitment to changing things and to fixing and helping this place evolve for the betterment. And so those people that had those material gifts, or those gifts of not necessarily material, that's what they did in essence. They took a step back and said, look, if I'm going to ever get this right and bring it forward, I'm going to, cultivate it. I'm going to put my focus on it. and we understand that we're Elohim, and if we cultivate that in our education, we'll get to the place of understanding and how to create from that and what to do from there. Is that any comments or thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. Steve Jobs and the Microsoft dude are a classic example of this dysfunctionality. They took what they saw, and made something and created something that was not for the benefit of humanity. The purpose was to make money. The purpose was not to enhance society. It was to grow the business so it could make money. And even when we look at it from a musical perspective, now you can buy electronic devices that will make the music that you want it to, and it does not have to come from your soul. It comes from an instrument. So when I look at people like Jobs and whatever the Microsoft dude name, when I look at them, what I see is men who have no spiritual insight at all. Yet they have creative ability because every man, every being was created by Elohim. And because there is no spiritual insight at all, they end up creating something that is a earthly form of the spirit, and that those electronics that connect to this earthly spiritual thing called the internet is what they have focused on, but not to enhance humanity, not to connect the world, but based upon how much money they can make by connecting the world. The number of people that they can sell to. Microsoft, for example, Windows is no different than a greeted Webster. For example, with Microsoft, every time another word comes into play, you pay for it. So every year you're paying for something that has been revamped and not necessarily made more effective, but it has been. What you're actually doing is no different than paying for another word that goes into a dictionary, that kind of thing. And I hope that I'm making sense to you guys.
Yes, sir.
I would ask, is there anyone who sees that a little differently or can give me some more insight into it?
Well, yeah, and the thought on that was they tapped in with a different philosophy, and they followed that philosophy. And the definite point was look how they cultivated that, and so we come in with our philosophy, and not necessarily the monetary, but just cultivating the Elohim that's inside of us. What can we do? Because they got all that done by just saying we're going to just focus on this, we're going to cultivate our gift, and this is what we're going to do. And that's that philosophy, like we said, because even though those things were created and it seems ideal, it's no different than us going down a separate philosophy as well that we think is going to be good. And that's that success that we talked about earlier. Is like, which philosophy are you really going to follow? And at the end, what's going to be the result of it? Is there going to be any more awareness of what's inside of you, who you are? Or is that philosophy going to drive and define you?
Yes. This is Barbara.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't want to get us off track. I want to just talk a little bit more about healing in general. And from the eighth sense perspective, what healing is. So this is just simply another perspective of it. If everything that is ever going to be has already been created in the Creator. I mean, everything that is, everything that was, is, and will be has already been created. Has already happened in the Creator. So when the eighth sense, part of the eighth sense of meditation or even in music or whatever that we use to attach to that vibration of unicity, that vibration of oneness, is there to open us up so that we can be a conduit, we can attach to what's already in the universe. And in attaching to that, be a conduit from the spiritual into the physical. You said a while ago, and then Audrey picked up on it, about the folk who were killed in Charleston. And I think Ron talked about our hurt and things like that. But very early on, one of the things we said is they have to forgive. They have to forgive. And that didn't come from the six senses. That didn't come from the worldly, the physical perspective of what should have happened, catch him and give him justice and burn him. That, what we said early on when we first heard this was, there has to be forgiveness. And so what I'm suggesting is, one of the folk I've been reading talked about healing is not necessarily about just sickness and disease. And we already know that. Healing is much bigger than a disease. So when we attach to what's already been created, we're just attaching to the multiple potentials for what can be created, what healing can create. When we use words like forgiveness, that's speaking the language that attaches to the Creator. When we talk about love, that creates the space, that speaks to the language. In the Aramaic for something to be rendered, to be open, is ephata. And it talks about that when Jesus healed the deaf guy, if you remember. But ephato came from, thousands of years earlier in the old Egyptian god from Ptah. And it spoke of creating space, a process of opening to the divine, creating space, and then shaping it into words and actions for creation and healing. And so when we go beyond what you've said earlier about what the physical defines success as, success is not that, as you said. And healing is not what people usually think it is as it relates to just the disease. It is so much bigger. And so when we talk about healing then, and we attach to all of the possibilities that have already been created in the one Creator, we open ourselves up to all of those possibilities. If that means healing somebody physically, that's one thing. But it's greater than that also. It is healing this world, of this physical world, of all those things that keep people separated, with the perception of being separated and not understanding who they really are. And so when we attach to all of the possibilities, when we allow ourselves to be that conduit, then that's when healing can come through for humanity. Not just for me praying for my own self, but healing for humanity. And the universe knows what humanity needs. It is when we understand that we are the conduit for the universe and we are receptive vessels, then that takes it out of the realm of me, myself, and I. And it says, okay, there has to be forgiveness. And that's what happened in this realm. It was flooded with forgiveness. So much so that we probably don't even know the extent to which that occurred. If love is what was needed, that's part of healing too. And so I know I'm saying this a lot, but I'm processing in my mind. So thank you for your patience as I talk it through. That this process of healing then has more to do with that transmission of energy from the spiritual realm. That we are the conduits when we allow ourselves to be, because we're Elohim. But it's not just meant as a cure, but it's meant as a way to assist us toward our destiny. And not just us individually, but mankind, humanity, the destiny of humanity, being Elohim, the human that it was created to be. That's when the human understands that, then healing infuses the physical. Sorry about the length. Thank you.
No, you're fine. And you just touched on why it's so important for us to connect to each other, because I think Ron brought up something last weekend, but if we got blinders on and I'm not connected to you, there's a chance that I'm not aware of a situation that you're aware of that I can contribute my energy to help with the healing. And that's where our connection, that's where the expansion is so important, is that when you are more aware of things, you're able to apply your energy to it. And then the opposite of that, when someone refuses to participate or become aware, it's just potential. It's just potential energy, and that's why the connection and the expansion is so important. And when you were talking, I thought of two things. One thing I thought of, like if we want to know how we are as far as being connected, just imagine that we're one of these huge room puzzles, these puzzles that take up an entire room, and someone flips it over, and we're gathered a little bit. But we're the piece, we're that puzzle, we're just taking ourselves back to the beginning, like our pieces are coming back to the beginning, and once we all get back, then we're whole again. Or I don't know if anyone here, the other thing I thought of when you were talking, from the mental aspect, because you're right, the healing is not just like from the sickness, or because we talked about the things we create in ourselves, anxiety and all these things too, but from the spiritual perspective of healing, if anyone's ever been in an escape room and you're all in there and you one person see the clues and have insight and awareness, and you all work together, get out. And when you get out, and if you stop back and you reflect on all of the pieces and the energy and the thoughts it took to put things together to move forward, to get out of that room. So as you were talking, those are sort of the puzzle in that escape room kind of came to mind, because we do have to contribute our energy, and it goes back to, as we contribute it, the more that's it's given to us. Because it's not for us. So as we receive the enlightenment, the energy, that's why we have to constantly expand. As you expand, it's almost like feeding the hopper. It's just gonna constantly be given. It's a constant flow and growth. But I definitely appreciate that. It's all what we're bringing forward, and it makes total sense. And you can't really look at it as just physical, but look at it as just something that's constantly expanding. And whether it's a mental or mind or spiritual awareness, the expanse is in that awareness, and that's where the healing is. And we align ourselves because we're more aware of what needs our energy at a certain time.
I thank you for that explanation. I thank Barbara too. I see it now. I see how it all connects and all of it fits together from the expansion to the healing. I can see it now, and that made sense. Thank you.
No, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Ron, too. Any other questions?
Just another observation. A lot of times we also, going back to this thought about success and wealth is one of those things. Spiritual wealth is more powerful because physical wealth can easily, you can see it, you can take it away. Spiritual wealth is not like that. So that's why those that have that spiritual wealth and understanding have an advantage over the physical, because you can't just go pluck it up. That was just an observation.
Yeah. And with the spiritual wealth, we should always be spending it. So that it's just because it's going to be replenished, and we should always, if you can see that, we should always be spending it wisely too. But because it's going to take the commitment for us to constantly be evolving and changing, and so that expansion. It's almost like if you can even picture a truck dumping in concrete into a wall, empty wall, and it's just constantly pouring that concrete in. And as that concrete comes in, that wall is getting stronger, the strength is expanding, and you just constantly fill it up. We're constantly getting and dumping. We're constantly receiving and dumping. But yeah, thank you.
The spend of this well. If we constantly spend it, there's nothing to be replenished. And wonder if when the talks about in Genesis, the earth, if this was this spiritual wealth.
Are you?
Huh?
Are you moving around?
Hello?
You were
Okay,
breaking
I'm
up,
in my
Pastor.
place.
Could you
As we
that?
spend I wonder if in Genesis, when it talks about replenishing, if it was not inclusive of our being replenished with the spiritual wealth as we spend it. And I see that more vividly than I've ever seen it. Every week we talk, and we are carried into places unknown to us prior to our getting there. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for some of us to sit down and prepare a lesson because it doesn't work like that. And as we move forward, then we are being replenished because of what we have put in the macro the day before, the hour before, the minute before. So that replenishing speaks to earth consciousness, as well as the enhancement of those who inhabit the earth.
Did everyone get that last statement about the replenishment? I think he lost him for a second.
Did I break up?
It dropped off.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I was saying is that the replenishing of the earth speaks to the replenishing of our spiritual wealth as well. And each week, each day, each hour when we are talking, we are replenishing the earthly consciousness with spiritual principles. And it's impossible for most of us anyway to prepare a lesson, because our lessons come as we talk, as we open ourselves up to be replenished. That's where the spiritual wealth is deposited, and the deposits are not left there to gain dividend or to gain interest. The deposits are dispersed immediately for the purpose of enhancing humanity by virtue of putting it in the macro. Did I drop off that time?
No, that was clear.
Okay. Does that make sense though?
No, it does for sure. I mean, like one of the things we didn't talk about today, or one of the other negatives that people have, tried to center with success, is that there's this idea to be superior to someone else, and you just kind of like really, gave an explanation of why that won't work either. I mean, like that's why that's not good, because there's always that part of success where if I am different and superior to whoever else, also being very successful. And so this is not about being superior, it's about being connected and expanding together. No, I definitely understand what you're saying about putting that out in the macro. Was someone else getting ready to say something? I heard a couple of clicks or. Hello.
I believe that we're at a space within the universe where we have become more now than ever before the physicians of the earth. We have a greater capacity of greater understanding of the capacity that we were created with for the purpose of bringing healing to this global ball called Earth. And I do believe that healing does not come from Earth itself. It comes from the universe. And as Barbara said, we are conduits for it. And I do believe that we have to get to a place where we do not have to remind ourselves that we are Elohim, that we do not talk about functioning as Elohim, because we don't. You don't function as feminine energy. You just function, and it takes place when it's necessary. So what I'm saying in essence is this: um, we have the opportunity to function spiritually and to function through these physical bodies, even function through our minds. I do believe that we are in a place where our minds are becoming one with our soul, and when we allow our minds to become one with our soul, it is at that point that we are in the space where Jesus was after he was resurrected. I believe that the resurrection of Jesus speaks to us in a different way than what we have celebrated or seen. We must be resurrected in order for us to function as did Jesus. And our resurrection has nothing to do with us being physically nailed to a cross. And Jesus understood that and told us that when he said, pick up your cross daily and follow me. So he was talking about a type of crucifixion that did not involve a wooden cross and metal nails, but it involved a crucifixion of the things that we have been taught and have embraced. And the resurrection is when we see that the value of what we have gone through, even though it has not healed mankind, the value of it is that we understand what needs to be healed. The value of it gives us the strength and helps us to see the capacity we have to bring about that healing. So our resurrection is about bringing truth into the earth in a way that it has not been in the earth. Jesus taught us how to do that. The truth of what Jesus taught is the journey to getting where we become one with Elohim. Jesus knew that he was that and knew that all of us were supposed to be that. And our resurrection is to teach people how to embrace that and make them become aware of it by virtue of putting it in the macro. And we are seeing not only with our eye, but we are seeing with our eyes the manifest changes that are taking place because we have embraced a resurrection without even knowing we have been resurrected. At this juncture of our journey, we can no longer talk about what is to come because everything already is. So from this period forward, if I talk about what is to come, I would appreciate it if I'm corrected so that we can escape this bondage of what is to be as opposed to what is. And this goes all the way back to there is no tomorrow. Everything is now. And if everything is now, then everything is. And because everything is, all we need to do is have a desire to become aware of it, not more aware, but just aware of it. And in becoming aware of it, we are shown what we never knew was possible, which means that we are beginning to know what we don't know. And that in itself puts us in a position not only to be the healers of the breach, but also to be the covering for humanity. And the covering for humanity, the purpose of it is to recover truth on behalf of humanity so that our being one entity will grant us the opportunity to open the eye of those who we've never met and begin to see the results of that. So right now, at this place of teaching, of being made aware, we have to again shift our speech, and every time that we get a clearer understanding, we see that what we say needs to be altered and altered in such a manner that it is in vibration with the universe itself, because the universe does not speak of what is to come. The universe speaks of what is, and everything that is is available to us if we open ourselves up to it. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Questions or comments about that?
Anyone have
done.
anything?
So, Pastor, so in regards, in light of the 8th sense, our mindset should be that everything is. Everything was, is, and always
Yes,
will be already there.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We have talked about seeking balance to come to the earth. Balance is here. It's just distorted by the distractions that our eyes lock on, our eyes focus on. We can reveal that balance to everyone when we ourselves embrace the reality that the balance exists right now. I'm done this.
Okay. Anyone else with any other thoughts or questions? I think it's a good place for a pen today. But definitely thank everyone for contributing the insights today and really helping it flow and hopefully we got a better understanding of what healing is and what we are as far as our relationship to things like success and how we affect the environment around us and how we should interpret these things, because the awareness is the key. I'm hoping that everyone will think about that a little more this weekend and bring any questions or thoughts you may have. And but that's sort of all we have for today, unless there's anything else. All right. If
Thank you.
nothing else, we'll definitely pick back up tomorrow for those who are logged in. Appreciate your time and thoughts and questions and just like I said, just continue to think about it and bring up anything you want. But we'll see you guys later.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Riss.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye then.